Hi, I'm Don Barry, and this is another edition of CFBC Through the Years. Today, I want to start by sharing with you a passage of Scripture from the book of 1 Timothy. Deacons, likewise, are to be men worthy of respect, sincere, not indulging in much wine, and not pursuing dishonest gain. They must keep hold of the deep truths of the faith with a clear conscience. They must first be tested, and if there is nothing against them, let them serve as deacons. In the 1960s, there were several great men who wore the mantle of deacon. If you have knowledge of Scripture, you probably recall that the apostles were so busy in the early church that they sought out help. And they called these men deacons. Deacon, the word, literally means helper. You might remember the story of Stephen. He was one of the first 7 ordained deacons, and he also was one of the first church martyrs because he was stoned because of his faith in Jesus Christ. You can read all about him in Acts 6. Well, as a young boy in this church back in the 1960s, I remember the deacons very well. There was Jeffy Biggs, Earl Pratt, Dallas Harrison, and Owen Randolph. These were men who loved the Lord and loved our church. Each of them came from different backgrounds. Jeffy Biggs was a warden at Menard, and others had varied employment. B.J. Cranford then joined them after moving here on a transfer with the Missouri Pacific Railroad. He was an ordained deacon from his previous church, and he was quickly accepted into ours. And then, on February 28th, 1970, 2 more deacons were ordained. They were Vernon Osmar and my dad, Garrett Berry. Now, these 7 men were similar to the first 7 deacons, and they are who I remember the most. Now, there were others before them, and there have been others since then. But these men worked side by side with Reverend Gent and then Reverend Sledge, and much was accomplished during their years of service. Each one of these men taught Sunday school classes. I had almost every one of them as a teacher. They also sang in the church choir, and sometimes they led congregational singing. B.J. Cranford often preached. In fact, one of his sermons was the one that I responded to when I made my decision to follow Jesus Christ. Now, these deacons were at almost every single service that the church had. And you know what else they did? They rolled up their sleeves and they took off their ties when there was other work that needed to be done. They truly were helpers, and they truly blessed this church. Brother Earl Pratt was a boss on the railroad over the Gandy dancers. Now, Gandy dancers were the men who laid the ties and the track. These were tough, rough, outdoorsy guys that were strong as could be. Well, Brother Earl Pratt was gruff as well. I remember his favorite song was, "We'll work till Jesus comes." He was also the leader of the youth Sunday school. Now imagine that. I think they were pretty smart. They put a good, strong man in there, and he did a fantastic job keeping knuckleheads like myself in check. Vernon Osamar was our church treasurer for many years. I also had him as a Sunday school teacher. He was great at both of those jobs, and it was while he was our treasurer that we were able to pay off the note on the building of our church. And he also oversaw the financing for the construction of our education building and our church parsonage. Now, of course, my dad was undoubtedly my favorite deacon. But my next favorite was a man named Owen Randolph. Mr. Randolph also taught me in Sunday school for a number of years, as did Jeffy Biggs. But Mr. Randolph was different, though. He always had a joke, and he always had a smile on his face. He made us laugh while we learned Scripture, and we always had a good time because he was as genuine as he possibly could be. He also had a little red sports car convertible, and I remember I got to ride in it a couple of times. Now, my favorite story about Mr. Randolph is from a Sunday when we were having a meal after our church. You see, he sang in the church choir, and the choir always remained up in the choir loft even during the preaching service. So on this particular Sunday, Mrs. Randolph was downstairs because she was helping prepare the meal that was to follow service. Now, I had helped be an usher, and I helped take care of the offering, and at that time we used to take it downstairs to the tellers who would count it. Well, when we got downstairs, Mrs. Randolph asked me if Owen was also on his way downstairs to help her because she needed him to help set up tables. I told her I didn't think so. Mrs. Randolph was about to take things into her own hands. She went upstairs, and from the back of the church, she peered through one of these windows, and she desperately attempted to get Owen's attention. Now, he either didn't see her or he possibly was ignoring her. I'm not sure which. But she was not to be deterred. She ventured back downstairs and then headed up the back way of the church. By now, I had returned upstairs and was sitting in the back row with the other ushers when I saw something I had never seen before, and I probably will never see again. Mrs. Randolph climbed down the baptistry steps where I'm standing, reached through the baptistry window, and hit Owen on top of his bald head with her hand. That got his attention. He immediately got up, left the choir loft, and headed downstairs to help his missus. Reverend Sledge was our pastor then, and he had absolutely no idea what had just happened. But the entire congregation had been witness to it, and they were all laughing. Reverend Sledge could only shake his head and wonder, and it sure made for a very memorable service. Through the years, there have been many other wonderful men who have answered the call and served here as deacons. And you know, in November 1999, I was honored to be asked to serve. And it's something that I don't take lightly. And I try to be as much like those who came before me and left me such fine examples of what a deacon should be. We have them to thank for so much that we have today. They were tried and true, tested men who served God in this church. I hope you've enjoyed this little journey with me down memory lane today. And next week, we're going to sit down and talk to one of our seasoned members who plans to share some of her fondest memories of being here at Chester FBC. Thanks for watching.